Hello, everybody. Welcome to Shadow at Night. This is Monday, March the 17th, 2025. And on the show tonight, Mark Carney. Is he acting outside the boundaries of Canadian law with what he's been doing so far as the Prime Minister? And the reasons that he should not be. It's not about law. Well, maybe it is in some respects. It's more about convention, and that's one of the main problems with our system, the Westminster parliamentary system, is it's based upon conventions which are not actually established as law or even constitutional law. It's just an idea of what you should and shouldn't do lest you be caught doing something bad. But these liberals for the past 10 or so years really don't care about that. They don't care about convention. They don't care about the way things used to be. We're progressives and we're going to be progressing forward and we have to bastardize the system. Then that's exactly what we're going to do. For example, right now, Mark Carney should not be acting as Prime Minister in Europe. Yet there he is holding press conferences and meeting with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Francois whatever. What's his last name? I was going to say Mitterrand. But that's like years ago. French President Macron, right? Emmanuel Macron. He shouldn't be doing that. He can't do anything for them. They can't do anything for him. He can't he can't make any deals. He can't make any bargains. He shouldn't be acting as Prime Minister until he faces the House of Commons and gains their confidence. And Parliament is suspended up until next Monday. We're going to see what happens. It's going to be a very interesting couple of weeks in Canadian politics, but definitely our system needs a change, and we're going to go into that later on tonight. Also, Candace Malcolm of now Juno News, used to be True North, now it's Juno News. She put out a piece regarding Carney's daughter/son receiving gender treatment at Tavistock Institute in the UK, the now discredited Tavistock Institute. And the left is losing their minds about this right now on X. I sent her a message, Candace, earlier this afternoon saying, never back down from the mob. Don't retract the story. Don't take it down. Leave it up. Even National Post columnists and reporters are giving her a hard time about this. This is not news. This is character assassination. No. It's not. It goes to Mark Carney's character and decision-making, as a matter of fact. Sending an underage child to a gender reassignment institute is not what I call good parenting. And possibly this could come out as an election issue. I'm not saying it will, but could. Only if Pierre Poilievre has the cojones to be able to say, you know what, this is absolutely ridiculous, all of this nonsense, which is a winner. It's a winner. Billboard Chris, he was on the show last year, and he told me, he said, you know, Shadow, I stand on street corners in every major city in the world with the billboard on saying genital mutilation for teenagers is wrong, that kind of thing. And 99% of the people agree with him. 99.9% of the people agree with him. He does get attacked occasionally by the weird fascists on the left. But for the most part, he's saying 99.9% of the people agree with him. It's a winner. It's a political winner. And yet for some reason, the politicians in this country anyhow are afraid to even bring it up. And when they are asked that question, they kind of stumble and stammer and try and find their way around it. They weasel around. It's no good. You have to stand up and say, this is not right, man. This is the same situation that we experienced with the bulimia epidemic, social contagion back in the 1990s. It's the same thing. And there's so much proof to back that up. Anyhow, we're going to cover that a little bit later on in the show tonight as well. Now, tomorrow night, I'm going to wait on this one. Over the weekend, our friends Greg Wycliffe and Jason Levine held a 12-hour marathon in support of our friend Greg Arcade. Greg is a country music singer, and he's been diagnosed with brain cancer. So there's a give, send, go up for him. Not for him. You'll find out from watching this video, I suppose. For his family. They set out with a goal initially of $5,000, and since then, because of the the marathon that Jason and Greg did on the weekend, and I was proud to be a very small part of that as well. And some other very familiar faces that you know. I streamed the whole thing live on my Facebook platform because I felt it was definitely worthwhile. This guy has done so much, Greg has done so much for people behind the scenes. You see, aside from being a country music artist, and an award-winning one at that, he's also a genius when it comes to music production and website production. And he's helped so many of your favorite independent media in the past few years get their shows on the air and some other things, that it's time for us to step up and help him up. So as you can see, excuse me, they have far exceeded their goal of $5,000, now at $20,754. Greg is going to lose work over this. He may not survive this. It's brain cancer and it's bad. And his family, his wife and young daughter, 18-month-old daughter, are going to need our help. I'm going to play the entire video here. This is 12 minutes long. The Give, Send, Go links are in the comments on Rumble and on Facebook and on YouTube and on X, I believe. And if not, I will put them there. So here's Greg Arcade telling us the bad news.
It's been a while since I've talked to you guys, and I'm just gonna out and say it. I have cancer. I have, it's brain cancer. We're not certain if, it's one thing or the other, but it's bad. He went into the hospital on Sunday, and last night, which Thursday, I was home. They're going to do a biopsy because it's one or the other, but it's bad. I'm going to fight it, and with all my heart. When it started, it was a couple weeks ago, but it was just like texting. It was like, oh wow, I'm tired. And then Tuesday last week is still like, wow, I'm tired. I've been working out at the gym with the office. And then Friday, I had a light headache, and I was like, oh, this is bad. I'm just gonna go home, grab some snacks, fetch on the couch, and it didn't get worse. The headache went away, but my wife was like, I got a bad feeling about this. So I went to the hospital. I confirmed with my friend who doesn't, I'd like the hospital, and it was about 6 a.m. when they told me. I had a lot of family, friends stop by, And so they did, not to get too technical, but they did my dog's barking outside. It gets a little difficult, but they did several CAT scans, MRI, and I go in for a biopsy on Monday, so we can really get it, and we'll fight it. I'm making this video if there's anyone if there's anyone who wishes to make a donation. We've got a Give, Send, Go. So that's gonna be there, and whatever you get, it's to mainly help with, because I'm gonna lose work of this, but to mainly help living expenses and treatment and just comfortability, I guess. It's for living expenses and treatment. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to do the DistroKid and give me a sec. I'm gonna do the DistroKid or something similar where I can put on the thing. I'm sorry, the baby was crying. But I know that I can fight this. And anything you help would just give us a few months like rent and living expenses. I'm going to put my records up on DistroKid or something similar, so it's going to go to my wife's funds, and that way, if something happens to me, something can go to her as well. And I want to say thank you to all of you. I really wanted to just be a homesteader and and do the things I wanted with my daughter or other children. But right now that's on hold, and hopefully I'll do something in the future. But I'm not scared for me. Just scared that my wife and my child could potentially be. I would not be advocating for them. So anyway, that's what I think has to be said. The baby, Brian, remind me, the baby, the baby, crying got the best of me there, but at the same time, that's the sorry, that's the sweetest sound in the world.
So I put the link for this Give, Send, Go, which includes the video here that I've just played for you, into the comments of all of the social media streams that you're watching on tonight. If you can't find the link, all you need to do, if you want to give something, is just type into a search, Greg Arcade, Give, Send, Go. The page will pop up. And you'll be able to tell it's the right one because it's got this video right on it. So I'm going to play the rest of this. It's about a minute and a half, and then we're going to get into the show. And we are going to go a little bit long tonight on socials. Okay? Let's continue.
So, no matter what happens to me, keep on keeping on, because world's got to keep moving, and you guys gotta keep moving too. And I guess there's just one thing left to do. It's grand gestures as I am. Let's get this over with, and I'll have some updates. Okay, bye.
Okay, so there it is. Give, Send, Go, Greg Arcade. That's a man. That's a man who is scared more for his family, his little girl and his wife, than he is for himself. That's a man. One thing about Greg is that he never asked for anything in the services he provided to people. He took what was offered, but he never asked for anything. And some of the music that he made, and hopefully will make in the future, is really good. Like I said, he's an award-winning Canadian country musician based out of Manitoba. So if there's anything that you guys can give, $5, $10, whatever it is, it all adds up over the course of time, and his family is going to need that help. So thank you. Tomorrow night on the show, I was contacted out of the blue today. Dr. Anne-Marie Yim. Now, I want to get this right. I spoke to her on the phone for about a half an hour this afternoon. Dr. Yim holds a doctorate in organic chemistry and is a researcher at the university, or at least was a researcher at the University of Michigan, with experience in cancerology. Anne-Marie Yim is also a patent engineer and lawyer. She's received several awards for her work, notably in 2001, 2008. She founded Lux Synapse Sciences and language tutoring in 2018 to help students with academic difficulties in secondary schools. You're not going to be able to find much online regarding Dr. Anne-Marie Yim, and what you do find will be in a different language. Most of the interviews that she's done over the course of the last 3 years have been in French. She lives in Luxembourg currently. Like I said, I spoke to her on the phone this afternoon, and her life is under threat constantly. Many of the colleagues that she's worked with these past 2 or 3 years have died suddenly and quickly and accidentally, quote unquote. She's received many death threats, and she's had several attempts on her life, as she said to me on the telephone this afternoon. And the reason for this is because she started an investigation into the contents of a certain injection that many, many, many people received over the course of the past 2 or 3 years, and some are still receiving. And she discovered a certain ingredient that is self-assembling. And we've talked about that in the past as well. So when I told her this afternoon, I said, Dr. Yim, this is nothing new. We've known about this for a while. It's confirmed, she said. It's confirmed. And then she proceeded to tell me some of the things that this technology can, in fact, do. Things that we have only suspected that it could do up until we hear from Dr. Yim tomorrow night. Now, because of the gravity of the situation that she faces, and because of the extraordinary information we'll be providing tomorrow night in this interview, it will not be available on YouTube. And I am strongly considering removing it from Facebook tomorrow night as well. I'll be recording this interview with Dr. Yim tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock Central Time for air tomorrow night. It's possible I may have the time to edit certain things that she says or bleep out certain things she says so as not to offend the algorithms on either one of those 2 platforms I just mentioned, so you guys can hear it. But I believe it's important that you get to hear the entire unedited conversation. So I'm still weighing these possibilities. One way or the other, this interview will air tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central on maybe not all, but definitely, some of my social media platforms. So if you're not following this show on X or on Rumble, I suggest you start. And if you're not a member of shadowdavis.com, I suggest you become one. full, completely unedited interview with Dr. Yim will be available there, definitely. If it stretches to 2 or 3 hours, then the entire thing will be available on the website. Also, join the Shadow at Night community on Telegram. Dr. Anne-Marie Yim is on the show tomorrow night. Shadow at Night live stream, as always, is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com.
Amazing. It has several natural health benefits, and it's been used for hundreds of years for health and healing. That's the main reason they made silverware from silver. But seriously, this nano silver from Silverceuticals is the best and safest silver you can find. There are hundreds of studies and reports on it. I've read some of the studies myself, and it's mind-blowing. One of the things that sets Silverceuticals apart is that it washes out of your body in 24 hours. No silver buildup and no turning blue. And it won't even harm the good bacteria your body needs. It's so effective they can use very small concentrations of silver, like 10 and 32 parts per million, and still outperform other silvers that have up to 3,000 parts per million. It's safer and more effective at the same time. It is an incredibly small particle that is small enough to work through your body, but big enough not to fall out of suspension. They infuse it into almost all of their products. It works in facial serums, toothpaste, gels, and even gummies that work to help your immune system.
CanadaNanoSilver.com is the website, and your telephone number if you're interested, you want more information, you want to become a retailer of these awesome products. Kevin and Anna, 204-808-9292. And look at this. They're going to be at the National Women's Show at Stampede Park BMO Center in Calgary on April the 5th and 6th with all of their products. They're traveling across country. Well, not cross country. Part of the country. From Winnipeg to Calgary, it's about 12 and a half, 13 hours, depending on how quickly you go and how many stops you make. National Women's Show. You can find Canada Nano Silver. Again, Stampede Park BMO Center, April 5th and 6th. And of course, like they always do, they'll be doing that draw for $690 worth of their products. Go and check them out. CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.com. All right. Hello, Roseanne, Katoka, Wayne, Kathy, Carol, Janet, Barb, Mireille, watching on Facebook and X tonight. And North Scotty, Carly, Simon, Nana Sue, Esky Dogs, North Scotty. I said North Scotty. Ashan Gandhi, 123, Notable, is watching on Rumble tonight. Thank you guys for your continued support on all of the platforms and, of course, the website. You are a very key ingredient in the success of this show. By the way, only 4 shows last week. We garnered over 100,000 views. So thank you for being here, and thank you for all the sharing that you do. Mark Carney, the new unelected Prime Minister of our country, has taken a state visit to Europe to discuss whatever, strategies, I suppose, in a, what did he call it? An alliance of the willing today in terms of helping Ukraine. So he met with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the French guy there, President Macron. And he spoke to the media as well. And here he is thanking the king for greeting him today.
You know, I want to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to His Majesty King Charles III for his warm welcome and gracious hospitality that he showed me, he showed Canada with today's audience. Also want to thank Prime Minister Starmer for a valuable discussion on how our long-standing economic and security partnership can help build growth, prosperity, and security for our citizens today. Canada and the United Kingdom share a history, we share values, we share a sovereign. And those shared values between Canada and the United Kingdom, they are demonstrated through the leadership of Prime Minister Starmer, President Macron, and Canada's participation in the coalition of the willing
there it is.
For Ukraine. Advancing the support for Ukraine is very necessary. You may have seen that I have invited President Zelensky to the G7. I look forward to hosting him in Canada in June. There are a host of other measures that we are taking as part of the coalition willing to support that.
He can't do that. I'll explain why in just a second. He is not supposed to be acting outside of normal circumstances unless there's an emergency declared. Have you seen an emergency declared? Has anybody said emergency? Emergency? Or is maybe the COVID emergency still in effect? I don't know. Was it ever rescinded? Mark Carney. Unbelievable. Should not be speaking on behalf of Canadians anywhere. From left-wing corporate Global News, Carney says Trump must stop 51st state threats before U.S. trade talks can continue. Maybe that's why he's in Europe instead of the United States, trying to get Donald Trump to stop the tariffs. Here is Carney talking about just that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I note a hint of arrogance. Watch.
Closed doors, did any of the leaders you met with today offer assurances that they would have Canada's back if Donald Trump uses greater economic force or more to annex or absorb Canada?
Well, I would note, let me state the obvious, which is that all of us are members of NATO. All of us have to respect Article 5 of NATO. So the or more part of your question is unthinkable. What we did discuss is, particularly with France, is deeper security and military cooperation, which is in the interests of overall global security. And we did discuss in both cases deepening of our economic ties. Thank you.
Prime Minister Mike Lukather with CTV News. I take your point earlier on a number of our allies talking about our sovereignty today. But nobody's come out forcefully and said those comments about the 51st state are just not on. Do you think that our traditional allies are not sticking their necks out because they're concerned that if they say something that'll anger President Trump, that they'll be next?
I think I would take seriously what the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom said today. I don't think one needs to respond to every comment about another country. Look, we can stand up for ourselves. It's Canada strong. We can stand up for ourselves. We've called out those comments. They're disrespectful. They're not helpful. And they need to stop before, and they will have to stop before we sit down and have a conversation about our broader partnership with the United States. But we're Canada. We don't need other people to come to our aid. Come on.
Did he just lay conditions down on Donald Trump? We're Canada. We don't need people to come to our aid. We're Canada. We're Canada. Hey, look, man, you know what? I'm proud of this country like anybody else, and this is the mistake that a lot of people are making. They're letting their emotions dictate what they say, and they should stop and think before they say anything on social media or anywhere else for that matter. I don't care how many people they think they've got behind them. Bottom line is Canada cannot stand on its own 2 feet, and that has been clearly demonstrated in the last month and a half. Without the United States, Canada ceases to exist as a country. Sorry to tell you, but that's just the way it is. Mark Carney is, in fact, arrogant. Look at him losing it with a left-wing corporate media reporter.
Madam.
Mr. Carney, Stephanie Levitz, the Globe and Mail. We understand that you have now placed your assets in a blind trust, so you don't know what's happening to them going forward, but you knew what they were going into that blind trust. So what are they?
Look, Stephanie, I follow the rules of the Ethics Commissioner.
All right, so first, look, Stephanie, like she's some child that needs to be admonished.
Following them well in advance of any of the requirements, as you know, because I know you know this, you know that these requirements come into effect.
And now he's walking it back a little bit, trying to be more gracious and cordial.
In months. We're talking days after I became Prime Minister. So I'm complying with the rules of the Ethics Commissioner, going through the processes and all these things that are necessary.
The rules say that those assets should be publicly disclosed within 120 days, which means you'll campaign in a coming federal election, most likely within the next 120 days, and are serving as Prime Minister now, with Canadians not being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you sought to avoid.
What possible conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance.
Here he is. True colors are coming out.
Point final.
Are you saying you are not open to any conflict of interest?
Yes.
Trump spent most of his life in the private sector. There's no possible conflict of interest in your assets. It's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a
What? Look inside yourself? And now he's accusing her in a very roundabout way of having some kind of confirmation bias.
a prior of conflict and ill will. I have served in.
He's actually accusing a CBC journalist, Rosemary Barton in this case, of having ill will towards a Liberal Prime Minister. That's astonishing.
In the private sector. I have stood up for Canada. I have left my roles in the private sector at a time of crisis for our country.
Like, I'm the only man that can get us through this. I left my roles in the private sector to lead Canada out of this mess in this time of crisis with the windbag Donald Trump in the United States, is essentially what he's saying. He believes he's anointed.
I'm complying with all the rules. Your line of questioning is trying to invent new rules. I'm complying with the rules that Parliament has laid out and the responsibilities of the Ethics Commissioner. And I will continue to comply with those rules.
She's not trying to invent new rules, and far be it from me to defend a CBC journalist, but she is asking, and a Globe and Mail journalist for that matter, but she is asking a very valid question. Do you expect us to believe there are no conflicts of interest in this blind trust that you've put all of your assets into? Like we're just supposed to take your word for it? We don't even know you. We don't even know where you live. Do you live in Canada? How many houses do you have? Do you live in the UK? You've got a passport for the UK. Do you live in Ireland? Because you've got a passport for there too. Who are you, man? And don't get snippy with me. You're unelected. You know what? If you're elected with a strong mandate from the people of Canada, then maybe you can get snippy with reporters every now and again. Maybe if you had a strong lead in the polls, you don't, even though the polls show that there is a tightening there. I don't believe that at all. National Telegraph guy on YouTube is a good one to watch for that. Mark Carney, after he marched in the St. Patrick's Day parade. I think it was in Montreal yesterday for a couple of hours, and people there seem to love him for whatever reason. Mark Carney has been the prime minister, unelected, appointed prime minister of this country for 4 days. And he's already got that attitude? That's astonishing. Here he is talking about the carbon tax, even though apparently he signed a law the other day, or at least that's what the Liberals want us to believe, that cancels the carbon tax. Watch this.
Canada today, your political opponent, Mr. Poilievre, said that he would axe the industrial price on carbon. And I'd like to understand from you if you think that at this time, with all the threats against many of our big mainstay industries, which also are large emitters, if you think that your plan to tax them remains a viable and publicly supported plan.
Yeah. So our plan, and in fact the regime that's in place in Canada, and a variant of this regime is in place. There are some variances, you know, Tonda, between the provinces, but a variant of this linked to California is
regime. When you hear the word regime, he's not a politician. He's using words that he shouldn't be using. Regime, to me, sounds like a dictatorship. Upon first hearing, now I understand what he's talking about, the regime, the plan, the implementation, the structure, all of that. That's what he's referring to. But when he uses the word regime, it does not sound good to the common voter, which is good for us.
in place with Quebec and British Columbia, is to have a form of price for the largest, on carbon, for the largest emitters, said differently, the largest polluters. Now, what we are doing is changing that system or improving that system so that the price that's paid can be reduced by so-called carbon credits that are allocated. We are adding additional ones. We will be adding additional ones that ensure that the polluters are paying so that Canadians can receive support to reduce their own emissions. So it's a more efficient system. It works better for the large polluters. It works better for Canadians. And it also is a system that recognizes the new trading reality. So let's we have to be able to connect the dots, something that the opposition is totally incapable of doing, proven themselves totally incapable of doing. So on the one hand, we have our largest trading partner, as we've been discussing, attacking us, putting tariffs on us. On the other hand, we have the opportunity to diversify trade. Guess what one of the requirements is to diversify trade to the European Union? Guess what one of the requirements is to diversify trade to the United Kingdom? Guess what one of the requirements will be to diversify trade to emerging Asia? Is to have a form of price on carbon. So
I'd like to understand.
Wait a minute, hold on. I'm sorry about that. Whose rule is that exactly? Is it his rule, or did somebody else come up with this? Is he talking about, okay, so in order to trade with the UK, you have to have a carbon tariff or a carbon tax, same with France, same with Australia, same with Eastern Europe. Is that what he's saying? Because this is the first I'm hearing of it.
A form of price on carbon. So we are able to think one step ahead. We're able to go out and see the world. We're able to help Canadian companies prepare. And you know what's going to happen 5 years, 10 years from now? If I have the pleasure of being in front of you, you'll be asking me the question, if we didn't do this, if we didn't help our companies get more prepared, the Americans are going to start caring about this again. They have elections every 4 years. They cared a great deal about this 3 months ago. Now all of a sudden they don't care about it. They're going to care about it again.
No, they won't. Now, I think what's going to happen is a culture change in the United States, right? I'm not saying that people need to go back to polluting and destroying the lakes and river systems and all of that stuff, because that was brutal. Now, that kind of stuff, when you see dead fish floating on, I mean, that stuff is bad. But what they're talking about here is a regime that will limit our freedom, plain and simple. We know this. We've known this for a very long time. Mark Carney has been one of the masterminds of this. He has been out there on the front lines with the United Nations and the World Economic Forum as an ambassador of climate for the past 3-4 years. And now it's time for the next phase. That's why he is the Prime Minister right now. It has nothing to do with anything other than it's time for them to bring in the next phase. What are we going to do about it? Interestingly, you know, I was talking to some people today and yesterday. Well, Shadow, we're getting a convoy together. I said, oh, really? And what do you plan to do? Well, we're going to roll across the country. I said, okay, so maybe what we need to do is make Canadians understand exactly what's going on here first. That Mark Carney is not getting rid of anything. He hasn't gotten rid of anything. He's only going to make things worse. He just said it right there in the clip I played for you guys. And we'll explain how he's been lying to Canada in the next couple of minutes. But first, Pierre Poilievre held a popcorn fart press conference this morning where he talked about removing once and for all the carbon tax from everything, not just from small and medium-sized retailers and businesses, but from industry, but from everything else, and using technology to fight climate change. And then some local reporters in Van Cleek Hill, which is a town directly between Montreal and Ottawa, started asking him some ridiculous questions. Listen to this.
My name is James Morgan. I'm from the Review newspaper nearby here in Van Cleek Hill. I know many of the people standing behind you, sir, may even live in this community and read our paper. But anyway, I appreciate your commitment and your statements on economic sovereignty and approaching this tariff situation from that. Do you have any ideas, though, on cultural sovereignty to strengthen that, to complement the ideas on economics? I'm thinking of things like continued support for local journalism or local broadcasting.
Yes, we are strong supporters of local journalism and local media, and we will make sure that, for example, local media, independent outlets get their fair share of government advertising. I also think we need a renewed commitment to celebrating our heritage and our identity. Over the last 10 years, there's been a tendency to tear down our statues, change the names of different public monuments in order to cancel our history. I think that has weakened the bonds that used to tie us together. I believe that we should celebrate our history. We should honor our first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald, without whom we would not have a Canada today. His vision of an East-West nation is really now more than ever needed. So we will be naming public monuments after him and many of our other historical figures. We will put a renewed focus on celebrating the military history, the extremely proud military history that we have over a century of defending freedom at home and around the world. We will ensure that our young people have chances to participate in that history by expanding, for example, the Cadet Corps and other programs that bring our people together from coast to coast to coast to coast. We now more than ever, we have to celebrate our proud heritage and our common Canadian identity.
This is Joe Coppolino from the Tribune Express Carillon, a local paper here. Following up on James's question, you've said that you want to get rid of the local journalism initiative, which is super important for our paper ourselves, particularly in this region where we are a bilingual paper, one of the few in the country and in the province and in the country. That program basically keeps us alive, particularly as businesses in this area begin to struggle, and I expect that they're going to struggle more in the coming years, regardless of which government comes on, given the economic opportunity outset landscape. What ways will a government support local journalism outside of the local journalism initiative program, which helps fund many of the journalists in this area?
Okay, now before he answers this question, I want you to write down in the comments what you think he should have said. My response to this journalist from Van Cleek Hill, the newspaper there, whatever it's called, the Van Cleek Hill Times or Post or Sun or whatever, would have been, if you can't stand on your own 2 feet, then maybe it's time to shut your doors. It's a business like anything else. And if you can't sell enough advertising, get enough circulation for your local newspaper, then maybe it's time to pack it in. That's what I would have said. You guys seem to be agreeing with me. Okay, so here's what Poilievre said.
Thank you. Well, I have raised concerns with how the government has run that program and other media support programs. My platform will have measures that will strengthen local and independent journalism and give actually better and stronger voices to local journalism than we even have right now. So you'll have to stay tuned for that platform. We're just getting started. There's another...
What? You've got a plan? What's the plan, Pierre? What?
Better and stronger voices to local journalism.
You're going to give better and stronger voices to local journalism. Let me just back that up a little bit more.
Of the local journalism initiative program, which helps fund many of the journalists in this area.
Thank you. Well, I have raised concerns with how the government has run that program and other media support programs. My platform will have measures that will strengthen local and independent journalism and give actually better and stronger voices to local journalism than we even have right now. So you'll have to stay tuned for that platform. We're just getting started. There's another roughly 6 weeks, and you'll be seeing a lot more from me, and I think you'll like what you have to see about local journalism.
What? Are you still planning on defunding the CBC, Pierre? Who are you? Who is this guy? He sounds like a liberal. Why is he doing this? He had a runaway lead in the polls. So let's compare this to a hockey game where you're up 6-1. You're up 6-1 going into the third period. What do? Kitty bar the door. We're going to play defense first. We're not going to put too much pressure on. We're going to stop playing our game. We're going to go on the defense. We got this game won. We're just not going to do anything stupid. Well, that's what he's doing. He's doing stupid stuff. He's not attacking. He's not being aggressive. He is just, we're going to give you money. That's what it sounded like to me. Well, we're going to give small town newspapers money so they can go ahead and keep writing. You're going to like what we have to say. But we haven't got that in the platform yet. By getting rid of the CBC, you are putting X amount of advertising dollars back into the Canadian advertising landscape. And that should be enough. And if you can't somehow survive in that case, sorry about your luck, Chuck. Here's a new Conservative attack ad on the Liberals. Tell me what you think.
Looking at this today, you're not going to see, like so far, we don't have any new faces.
So don't expect some of the key figures to be out of cabinet. Maybe some will keep the same jobs. It'll shuffle a bit.
Take a look right now, Jonathan Wilkinson and Stephen Guilbeault.
Also doesn't feel all that different. We saw so many familiar faces on the walk-in. The question is, how successful can you be if you're also bringing in a cabinet with Chrystia Freeland? You're also bringing in a cabinet with Stephen Guilbeault. Are Canadians going to buy that? Is it going to be believable, or is it going to feel like, as Lisa put it earlier in the show, the same government more or less seeking a fourth mandate?
Effective? I don't think so. I don't think it's effective. I think it's weak sauce yet again. I mean, they're trying to attack, but they're not doing it right. They're doing it wrong. And I'll tell you why in that particular commercial. Outside of Chrystia Freeland, maybe Stephen Guilbeault, the average Canadian normie doesn't know any of the names or faces of these cabinet ministers who have been in power with Justin Trudeau for the past 4 or 5 years. They just don't know them. So you can sit there and say, well, it's been the same cabinet with Carney, same cabinet with Trudeau. It's just what you got to do is tie Carney to Trudeau, continually tie Carney to Trudeau. Carney was his advisor, financial advisor for 5 years. And you're going to bring up all of these names. Anita Anand, I barely know who that is. Melanie Joly, we know because she's incompetent. We know Freeland, obviously. We know Guilbeault because he's a psycho, in my opinion. But the other one there, Yves Duclos, I think his name was. I don't even know what minister he was. Why are they doing this? It just makes no sense. They're getting bad advice. Pierre, you are getting bad advice, man. You got to start attacking again. You got to go hard, and I'll tell you exactly how you can attack in just a couple of minutes. And there's a couple of things you can do. First thing is, Mark Carney is acting outside of his purview. He has lied to Canadians already, and he's only been prime minister for 4 days. Here's the headline from the Toronto Sun from, yesterday. From Brian Lilly. Mark Carney starts off as PM by lying to Canadians. Mark Carney's first act as Prime Minister of Canada was to lie to the Canadian people. That may seem like a bold allegation, but there are no two ways about it. Carney held a cabinet meeting, invited the TV cameras in, and held a Trump-style executive order signing that was nothing but a charade. You guys know this already. TV cameras aren't normally allowed into Canadian cabinet meetings, but Carney, just hours after being sworn in as Prime Minister, unelected Prime Minister, invited the media to watch him sign away the consumer carbon tax. Based on the discussion we've had, and consistent with the promise that I made and others supported, we will be eliminating the Canada fuel charge, the consumer fuel charge, immediately, Carney said. Immediately after that, Carney signed a document as if his signature wiped away the hated tax. To actually do away with the consumer portion of the carbon tax, but not the carbon tax completely, would require an act of Parliament. The Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act was passed in 2018 and allows the Governor and Council meeting Cabinet advising the Governor General to adjust the tax rate but not do away with it. That's the first lie Carney and the Liberals told on the carbon tax. After telling us for years that anyone who opposed the tax wanted the planet to burn. Oh, I've got a video for that I want to show you. This was last summer. Mark Holland, then health minister. Where is that video? I know you guys have seen it before, but I think it bears playing again because it's so absolutely idiotic. Watch this guy in Parliament last year.
A summer fun time vacation where you're locked in a car for 10 consecutive days, nonstop with no bathroom breaks, and the Conservatives have a plan for you to have that summertime fun. And the cost? Give up the future of the planet, right? Don't worry, kids, about climate change. Don't worry about taking action on the planet. Enjoy your 10 hours in the car and let the planet burn.
And, of course, all the clapping like the trained seals that they are. Oh, yeah, we got to have the carbon tax or the planet's going to burn. 10 hours in the car for the kid. And now they're all doing the exact same arr, 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 as Carney makes believe that he's gotten rid of the carbon tax. It's amazing. It's amazing. After telling us for years that anyone who opposed the tax wanted the planet to burn, the Liberals quickly threw their party's signature policy overboard to try and regain some popularity. The second lie they told is just as bad. The document that Carney signed on Friday in front of the cameras was useless. Oh, hang on a minute. Don't you hate it when your cursor just vanishes? I hereby instruct that the fuel charge be removed as of April 1st, 2025, and that the April 2025 Canada carbon rebate be issued. The document signed by Carney said, Prime Ministers are not presidents. They don't issue orders like this. They don't have the power to do so. It's not just a matter of optics. No PM has the legal authority to do what Carney tried to make you think he did. And there's the document, whatever this is. Yet there he was, just hours after invoking the history of Canada, the importance of the Crown, the Governor-General, the importance of the differences in Canadian versus American democratic institutions, and he was mimicking Donald Trump. There is no other way to interpret what Carney was trying to do other than a brazen attempt to use the Trump optics of signing an executive order to show that he is just as powerful. Here's what the actual order in council that allowed the consumer carbon tax to be reduced to zero, not eliminated, actually said. Her Excellency, the Governor-General in Council, on the recommendation of the Minister of Finance, makes the annexed regulations amending Schedule 2 to the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act and the fuel charge regulations under Sections 166 and 168 of the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act, the order stated. No need for Mark Carney's sneaky signature to make you think he did something he didn't have the power to do. This isn't the first time that Carney has been fast and loose with the truth. During the Liberal leadership race, he claimed to have worked with Paul Martin to balance the budget, and yet he didn't work at the Department of Finance until 2004, years after the budget was balanced. He claimed he had nothing to do with moving the offices of Brookfield Asset Management from Toronto to New York City, when in fact he chaired the board meeting where the decision was made, voted in favor of it, and then sent a letter to shareholders encouraging them to vote for the move. And now we have the fake Trumpian document signing. None of this is a good look for a man who is about to ask Canadians to entrust him with their vote while showing us that we can't trust him to tell us the truth. Now, is he acting outside the boundaries of Canadian law or just convention? This comes from the National Post, written by Tristan Hopper. Mark Carney's not really supposed to be doing anything. Until approved by Parliament, a Prime Minister's executive authority is supposed to be very, very limited. There he is marching in the St. Paddy's Day parade yesterday, Montreal. Oh, look at that. This content is only for subscribers. Oh, well, this is kind of the same thing here from Howard Anglin. The constitutional limits on Carney's powers as Prime Minister. So Canada has a new Prime Minister almost, and sort of. And this was written last week. Any day now, the Governor-General will swear in Mark Carney as Canada's 24th Prime Minister, but it's a title he'll hold with an asterisk until he meets the House of Commons and secures its confidence either before or after an election. Uniquely in Canadian history, Carney has ascended directly to the highest office, skipping the usual requirement of an election. We've had prime ministers without seats in the House of Commons before, but never one with absolutely no parliamentary experience before becoming prime minister. Carney was chosen from an Ozempic-thin field of candidates by a mix of Canadians and non-Canadians, some as young as 14, who signed up for free to vote in an online poll hosted by the Liberal Party. And on that dubious basis, he'll now assemble the newish ministry from Trudeau's discarded minority. Carney begins on thin constitutional ice, without the confidence of the House of Commons and facing 3 hostile opposition parties. This is not normal, to say the least. We're in uncharted territory here. For guidance, we must look to established constitutional conventions and the principles that animate them. Let's start with the basics. As explained by the government during the 2021 election, in Canada's form of democratic government, the legitimacy of the government flows from its ability to command the confidence of the House of Commons. When a government lacks that legitimacy, its powers are limited. There are 2 main situations when the confidence of the House is in doubt. The first is when Parliament has been dissolved, which happens during an election. The second is when there's good reason to doubt that a Prime Minister who assumes power without an election will be able to command the confidence of the House, as the case here. In these cases, because the government's legitimacy is in doubt, the powers are limited by a principle of restraint known as the Caretaker Convention. I wrote about this on Facebook today. This allows the essential business of government to continue, providing services, paying public servants, and etc. Damn it. But it otherwise admonishes ministers, including the Prime Minister, not to exercise the full powers of their offices. Specifically, as the government explained in 2021, to the extent possible, government activity in matters of policy, expenditure, and appointments should be restricted to matters that are A, routine, non-controversial, or urgent and in the public interest, reversible by a new government without undue cost or disruption, or agreed to by opposition parties in those cases where consultation is appropriate. Other restrictions include that departmental facilities and resources cannot be used for partisan purposes. All government-paid travel and hospitality expenses for ministers, ministers of state, and their exempt staff must be for official government business, and ministers of state's departmental communications and public affairs units must not be involved in partisan matters. Finally, the convention provides that ministers must defer to the extent possible such matters as appointments, policy decisions, new spending or other initiatives, announcements, negotiations or consultations, non-routine contracts and grants and contributions. All this means that Carney, until he's met the House and secured its confidence, his government should not commit Canadian tax dollars to any new projects, enter into new contracts or legal settlements, make any non-routine public expenditures, or make any appointments that are not easily reversible. If Carney tries to execute any orders in council inconsistent with the convention, like, I don't know, signing that BS order in council with the carbon tax last week, the Governor General should quietly leave them unsigned in her inbox until the government has secured Parliament's support. Of course, Carney's unorthodox selection is not the only unusual circumstance Canada faces. Facing American tariff threats, the Caretakers Convention exception for actions that are urgent and in the public interest may well come into play. But an exception should not be converted into a general license to govern as usual. Exceptions to the Caretaker Convention only apply to decisions directly related to the exigencies that justify them, and even then, the government should avoid acting unilaterally. The Liberals may bridle at these restrictions, but they have only themselves to blame. By proroguing Parliament rather than immediately calling an election, Justin Trudeau stretched our Constitution almost to the breaking point. Carney, his chosen successor, cannot be allowed to finish the job. And this is from Howard Anglin. He is a doctoral student, Oxford University. He was previously Deputy Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Yada, yada, yada. So what has Carney done? Well, before he even became Prime Minister last week, somehow the Liberals managed to send 84 million of our dollars to Syria. What? Canada announces plan to ease Syria sanctions. Move includes easing sanctions to allow funds to be sent through certain banks in the country. $84 million. The Canadian government said it's providing $84 million in new funding for humanitarian assistance to Syria. And they have recognized the Al-Qaeda government, terrorists, as the government of Syria. Internationally recognize them. They shouldn't be doing that. And they shouldn't be sending $84 million in new funding either when they're under the convention, caretaker convention. It's absolutely ridiculous. All right. Okay. Here's another thing. The Liberals and the NDP, all of the leftists, Marxists on X have been losing their minds about this today. And I spoke to Candace Malcolm about this today briefly on X as well. I gave her credit for this, and I said, never take it down. Do not let the pressure that these people are trying to put on you affect your judgment. This is a good news story. Why is it a good news story? Even though people on X have been saying, wow, this has nothing to do with Mark Carney. Leave the kids alone. Leave the kids alone. The lefties are now saying, leave the kids alone. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Mark Carney sent daughter to discredited UK Tavistock transgender clinic. What does this say about his parental judgment? Mark Carney's daughter, Sasha, who uses they, them pronouns and legally changed her name, discusses her experience at the radical Tavistock transgender clinic in an essay unearthed by True North. Mark Carney used his teenage daughter, Cleo, a first-year student at Harvard, to introduce him at the recent Liberal convention where party members voted to make him the Prime Minister. But Cleo isn't Carney's only daughter. Carney and his wife, Diana Fox, have 4 daughters. And the eldest, 24, is a prolific writer and trans activist. In the alternative magazine Authenticity, Sasha Carney penned an essay in April 2020 called Mumsnet and Transmasculine Childhood. In the essay, Sasha talks about her experiences of feeling confused about her gender as a teenager and receiving treatment at the discredited Tavistock Gender Clinic in London. The Carney family moved from Ottawa to London in 2013 so that Mark Carney could become the governor of the Bank of England. According to an interview she gave for the Ottawa publication Apt 613, Sasha, then Sophia, was 13 years old when the family relocated. Records show she moved back to North America to attend Yale in 2017. Sasha describes how one of her friends tried to game the system in order to get top surgery, a double-incision mastectomy meant to masculinize young gender-confused women. This is Sasha right here, by the way. Or Sophie or whatever. I watched as my friend, after a year of weekly appointments trying desperately to get an official diagnosis of gender dysphoria, was denied the diagnosis and with it any hope of top surgery because they sometimes wore skirts. They, meaning her friend, one, not more than one. Sasha also notes that she attended therapy at the infamous Tavistock Clinic. I felt a fierce surge of jealousy every time I walked into the Tavistock for therapy and saw patients turn left towards the medical spaces I didn't feel trans enough to enter. We'll come back to this. The Tavistock Clinic was ultimately shut down after years of controversy surrounding its treatment methods, which critics say amounted to medical experiments on children. Tavistock's child transitioning practice shuttered its doors last April after reporters revealed that minors were being rushed into life-altering treatment with few precautions. Ultimately, years of concerns from whistleblowers, clinicians, and detransitioners forced the UK's National Health Service to order the clinic's closure. The clinic prescribed puberty blockers to more than 1,000 children, some as young as 6, without adequate psychological evaluations. In total, 382 children aged 6 and under were referred to the Gender Identity Service at the clinic. It was accused of serving as a conveyor belt, funneling confused youth who often had concurrent mental health diagnoses into gender transition, sidestepping proper medical scrutiny. A court case brought by detransitioner Kira Bell was the final nail in Tavistock's coffin. Bell testified that she was fast-tracked into puberty blockers at 16 without fully understanding the consequences. The lawsuit triggered a wider probe, leading to the damning Cass review, which concluded that the treatment was harmful to children and little evidence existed to justify it. It's unclear how long Sasha Carney attempted therapy at Tavistock or if it provided her with any so-called gender-affirming treatment. Neither Sasha Carney nor Mark Carney responded to requests for comment from True North. Born Sophia, she legally changed her name to Sasha in 2021 in New York, but had been using the name Sasha for many years prior. In 2019 news articles for the New Haven Register, Sasha celebrates Yale for offering 3 gender choices on student IDs and identifies as being non-binary. Sasha has written for many publications promoting a hard left worldview and advocating for things like prison abolition and for controversial pharmaceutical drugs known as puberty blockers for gender-confused children. She also wrote about the genealogy of lesbian social spaces at Yale for the New Journal at Yale, but in later publications she railed against what she calls TERFs, trans-exclusionary radical feminists. So because of this, if you have an X account, you're going to see the left losing their mind. Leave the kid alone. Oh, my God. Families don't come into it. We don't do this in Canada. We don't do this in Canada. This is not Canadian. So what you've got are a lot of Canadian journalists and politicians all stacking up on people who don't believe in this crap and don't believe that Sasha Carney should be used as an example of her father's bad judgment. There's no reason to bring her/him into it, or they, or whatever. Yeah, there is. There is. Because Mark Carney has revealed nothing of his life. And why was this such a secret anyway? Why were the Carneys, or the Liberals, trying to keep this such a secret? Why? Because they didn't want it to come up in conversation. But now that it is, now that it's out there, they are all banding together and trying to vilify anybody who shares it. Anybody who wants to talk about it, because they believe that men should be allowed in women's sports, that boys should be allowed in girls' locker rooms. They believe, for whatever reason, that you can transition from one sex to another. Now, we know, of course, that that is absolutely crazy, and this is mostly a social contagion. And it's time that people in Canada start standing up to this nonsense once and for all. This is not about how people feel. You can walk around in a dress, if you're a man, and call yourself a woman all you want. But don't think that I have to do it, because I'm not. I'll just say, hey, dude, what's going on? I'm a woman. I don't care. You're a man to me. And you missed a spot shaving this morning, it looks like. Bottom line. And keep this crap away from kids. Period. Full stop. Kids do not need this kind of crap in their lives and to confuse them more. Why are they doing it? It's all part of the depopulation agenda. We covered this last week in the extension on shadowdavis.com. And Mark Carney does believe in this nonsense. Getting back for a sec, I know we're way late here, you guys, but I'm going to stay on. The whole thing, the whole show is going to be on social media tonight, the extension and everything. I hope you guys, you members at shadowdavis.com don't mind. I wasn't planning to go this long tonight, but what the hell? We're still here. Let's keep it going. Getting back to the Canadian parliamentary system, the Westminster parliamentary system that allows corrupted Liberal or any politician really to be able to circumvent what is supposed to be convention, what are supposed to be routine rules in this country. Carla Treadway, and I'm not sure if you guys follow her on any social media. You should. She releases very, very smart stuff, sometimes in short form, and she also does a long form podcast as well. We'll try and get her on the show at some point soon. Carla Treadway released this video today, and I found it to be very cool. Listen.
There's a big difference between what's legal and what's right. I find it very strange when people think they have this gotcha moment on me when they respond to my reels about things being anti-democratic with, that's how our system works. You see, we're having different conversations. You're applauding the system and saying that it's legal. It's not that I don't understand how our system works. I'm saying how the system works is flawed, and it hurts all Canadians on the left and the right. Yes, this is not the first time that Parliament has been prorogued or someone has been elected who wasn't previously an MP. I'm aware of that. When our system was designed, honor, decency, and integrity kind of used to be the glue that held things together. If you were caught in something like a scandal, like SNC Lavalin, you resigned or you called an election. Those types of things don't happen anymore. We have a system where the rule of law depends on the ethical behavior of our rulers. If our system depends on the ethical behavior of our rulers, then the entire system doesn't work at all, because the whole point of this system is to protect us against unethical behavior. And our experience has shown that those with power, right or left, are often unethical. You see, COVID pulled back the curtain for many of us who are awake now about what our system was actually like. People showing up on TV on a Tuesday to tell us what we need to do on a Wednesday. That's not how the rule of law works. It showed us that our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, for example, meant very little. So when people say, gotcha, when I make content about our system because they think I don't understand it, I'm telling them that we're having totally different conversations. I don't care what's legal. I care about what's right, honorable, and ethical. Our system is not. The things that this government is putting into law is not trustworthy or fair. I look at systems long term. It's very childish and short-sighted to applaud an unfair system and to let scandals slide because your side is the one that's capitalizing on it. I'm saying that the proper checks and balances need to be restored so no party, left or right, can manipulate the law. And right now, that's the Liberal Party doing it. They are the ones that are a huge danger to citizens here.
Absolutely. They are unscrupulous people. And they will abuse the system as much as they possibly can. Remember last week we talked about Canada possibly joining the European Union, and there was this poll out there, I think it was from Abacus, that said 46% of Canadians would join the European Union. Only 10% would join the United States. Interesting. Here are more of Mark Carney's comments today in Europe.
With you, Mr. President, I want to ensure that France and the whole of Europe works enthusiastically with Canada, the most European of non-European countries, determined like you to maintain the most positive possible relations with the United States. Canada is a reliable, trustworthy, and strong partner of France, which shares our values and lives them through action during this age of economic and geopolitical crises.
The most European of non-European countries. You know, I thought about that for a while today. My first reaction, my gut reaction was, shut up, you smug son of a bitch. You smug, unelected son of a bitch. And then I thought, no, you know, people in Canada still, I'm Polish Canadian. I'm Italian Canadian. Right? Still with that, where are you from thing. Now, I realize that is going away. My dad was always one to ask whatever girl I brought home when I was a teenager. So, where are you from? What are you Ukrainian? You hunky? That's what my dad would say back in those days. Total Archie Bunker, and it was embarrassing. So are we a European country, or is he just setting us up for possible entry into the European Union? It's interesting, isn't it? What about the tariffs? How come nobody's talking about the tariffs anymore? Is anybody talking about the tariffs? What are they at? 25% now, steel and aluminum? Or are they at 30%, 50%? I don't know. I guess it's been dropped from the news cycle. I haven't even seen much Go Canada stuff on social media these last couple of days. It's all been about Mark Carney this, Mark Carney that, and the occasional popcorn farts from Pierre Poilievre, who needs to start standing up, let's be honest. He needs to start fighting back harder than he's doing. He's playing it safe, and that's not going to work. Danielle Smith was at a conference over the weekend in Alberta. I think it was Vietnamese Canadians. And she was asked a question about how come she said no to Doug Ford and all of the other Team Canada members when they said, hey, you got to be willing to shut off oil and gas to the United States. Here's her response.
Two is people telling me I should turn off oil and gas going to the United States. And the reason I object to that is because if the United States turns off oil and gas coming to Canada, Ontario and Quebec can get zero oil and gas. The only way they get their oil and gas is from America. And that's why I've said we're not doing it.
Okay, I have a couple of ridiculous videos to break up the subject matter because we're going to get into something a little bit more heavy. And I'm going to have to drop YouTube from the feed in a couple of minutes. So those of you watching on YouTube right now, jump to another feed like Facebook or Twitch or X or Telegram or shadowdavis.com or Rumble or one of them, because YouTube is not going to like what I have to say coming up in the next 5 minutes. St. Patrick's Day Parade. This is from Karma Sad. She goes out and she films stuff at large public gatherings. St. Patrick's Day Parade in Toronto. They can't let people just go out and have fun for one day. They got to be there. They got to be there protesting. They got to have something stupid to say. So watch this.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. Fuck St. Patrick.
What do you mean?
He's a killer. He killed people. He got rid of people. He genocided people.
Let me just ask one of my advisors. Mitch, is there any truth to that?
No. Oh, yeah. As if you would know. And as if you would tell the truth. I'm part Irish, so I would know. Okay, yeah. And none of us here are Irish. And as if you've been taught the truth. Go look it up. Go look it up.
Do you guys know this guy has charges for pedophilia against him?
Yeah, we know that, yeah.
What about your pedophilia charges?
Yeah,
Is he a pedophilia charge?
He does, actually.
He looks like a pedophile.
Yes, he does.
Can you go into more detail about that?
You know all the details.
Please, I'm very curious. Time to go. Let's go. Out of here.
Go take it somewhere.
He just called you a pedophile.
I heard.
Apparently he is. Guy, it's time to go. Come on.
Those are for some very strong accusations.
I don't know. Take it up with her.
I mean, come on already. Like, when is this nonsense going to stop? Just keep walking, man. See, the problem with the left in Canada, and this has gone away now in the United States for the most part, is that these people, these activists, whatever they happen to be, trans, climate, COVID, you name it, they know that the law is on their side protecting them. Palestinian, definitely, after that cop video got released last week. I hope those cops get fired. And I hope that entire culture gets completely wasted within the Toronto Police Service and everywhere else for that matter. And I'm not sure if you guys know what I'm talking about, but if you have the time and an account, go on to X and look up Toronto Police Service Muslim, and you'll probably be able to see this video, even though the Toronto Police Service has eliminated it. Some people did manage to copy it and put it up there. So go check it out, and you'll be astonished at the attitude and the culture of the Toronto Police when it comes to Islamophobia, so-called Islamophobia, and the fact that so many people have been changing to Islam after last year, after October 7th, or 2 years ago now, I guess. Here's video of grown men fighting over Pokemon cards in the GTA.
Get your fucking army back right now! Who was it you? You just never know! What's Yo, hit the right spot. Get him. Get your boy, bro. He fucking shit himself.
Police, Costco, Brantford. What's wrong with people? A bunch of people fighting. People are dispersing.
I worry, man, about the mental health of our country and if we're ever going to be able to recover from this. And what do we do with these people? Did he just say that? I did. I did. This is an interesting story. I thought it was kind of funny. Donald Trump put out on his Truth Social today that Biden's pardons, they're invalid because he signed with auto pen. So the headline on this story, and maybe he's got a point, even though Barack Obama was the first U.S. president to sign an order with an auto pen, we can assume he knew what he was doing. Can we assume that Biden knew what he was doing? Probably not. Did somebody else use Biden's auto pen signature to sign these pardons? We don't know. So Trump tries to void Biden's pardons, blaming auto pen. Many presidents have used it, they say here. President Trump claiming without evidence. You see, they always have to throw that in there. Like the president doesn't know. He's been briefed by insiders. He's got records that only he can see and certain other people can see, and he can't share with the media, at least not all of the information. So he says it. He just comes out and says stuff. Without evidence, though. With no evidence. That some of former President Joe Biden's actions are invalid because he allegedly used a machine to automate signatures on documents, which is a long-standing practice in the White House. In a late-night Truth Social post, I think this was dropped at 2 or 3 a.m. Eastern. What are you doing up, bud? Trump said his predecessor's preemptive pardons of members of the House committee investigating the January 6th insurrection, they say it here like it's absolutely true. It's not, are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force of effect, should be or effect, because of the fact that they were done by auto pen. The notion that Biden relied on the auto pen to sign important documents was heavily perpetuated by the Oversight Project, an arm of the Heritage Foundation, played a key role in promoting false claims about non-citizen voting last year. You see, this news story is so biased. So biased. They use the word insurrection and they say false claims about non-citizen voting, which has not even been proven or unproven. So you can't say false claims until something has been proven or not. And the same with insurrection. It's never been proven by a court of law in the United States that January 6th incident was an insurrection. There's also something very funny I want to play for you guys. Here it is. Caroline Leavitt was asked today. She's the White House press secretary, as you know. She was asked today by a reporter if the United States would give back the Statue of Liberty to France, who originally gave it to them as a gift, I think, in the late 1800s. So watch this.
Something different. There is now a member of the European Parliament from France who does not think the U.S. represents the values of the Statue of Liberty anymore. They want the Statue of Liberty back. So is President Trump going to send the Statue of Liberty back to France?
Absolutely not. And my advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be to remind them that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now. So they should be very grateful to our great country. Kelly.
You know, when I was a kid, now Caroline Leavitt, I think she's 28 years old. She's really young for her job. When I was young, like 12 or 13 years old, we were learning about World War II. I think I was in 8th grade, maybe 7th grade or something. And I came home with books, you know, homework. And I walked into the kitchen. And the kitchen was like right the second you walked in the door. They walked up a couple of steps and there was the kitchen table. And my dad was sitting there with Mr. Johnson, who lived across the street. Mr. Johnson was a Canadian World War II veteran. But he never talked about it. Most of the veterans I've met don't like talking about it. And they'd been drinking some. There was a bottle of rye on the kitchen table. Anyway, my dad says something smart. What'd you learn today, boy? And I said, why was there World War II in the first place? Why can't people, 12 or 13, why can't people just get along? Mr. Johnson holding his glass of rye, pounded it down on the table, and he said, if it wasn't for us, you'd be spending Deutschmarks, boy, and speaking German. I turned around, went out to the backyard, threw the baseball against my pitchback. Didn't understand what he had said until years later. Interesting. I'd mentioned this earlier on the show, and I'm going to repeat it now. Tomorrow night, Dr. Anne-Marie Yim joins the show. She is a PhD in biosciences, and she has been doing some experimenting and looking into the injection that much of the planet took and still are taking in the past 3 or 4 years. And she's found some startling things, proven actually some startling things. And because of that, her life has been on the line now. Death threats. Many of her colleagues have been killed in the past year or 2 years based upon their work, the work that she did with them. I got to shut YouTube off. Bye, YouTube. If you guys watching on YouTube want to come over to another platform, we'd be happy to have you over there, but I got to take this off YouTube.